Hey friends, this is Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous, where we analyze pop culture through the lens of race or gender, and sometimes both. I'm your host, Julia Washington, and on today's show, we're heading to Notre Dame. The Hunchback of Notre Dame was first released on June 21st, 1996. But before we dive in, let me introduce you to my guest. You know her, you love her. She is one half of Still Comfy, the host of To All the Men I've Tolerated Before. Natalie Katona is here. Welcome,
I
Natalie.
I am ready for the eyes of Notre Dame.
I just realized I left my glasses in the other room. It's fine.
Sanctuary. Sanctuary from misogynist rich white men. I beg.
You know what I meant to do before today? I meant to look up like Victor Hugo's version just to kind of get like refamiliarize myself, and I totally forgot.
I have never read the book, nor have I watched the actual black and white movie because the cartoon is scary enough.
Yeah. Okay, let's kick it off with so we're gonna kick this bitch off with a summary, and y'all know it's from Google because that's what we do here. An animated Disney adventure follows disfigured Quasimodo, the bell ringer of Notre Dame Cathedral, who bides his time locked away in a tower. With only gargoyles to keep him company, Quasimodo longs to be with the other people, leading to his chance encounter with the enchanting gypsy Esmeralda. When the beautiful young woman catches the attention of Quasimodo's guardian, sinister Frollo, Quasimodo must help to keep her out of his clutches. Yeah, because he's completely racist. That's why.
I love the bell ringer of Notre Dame Cathedral who bides his time locked away in a tower. Number one, he's not biding his time. He's a captive.
He's a captive.
And he's a captive instead of just being chucked into a well, which was the original plan.
Horrifying thing. I'm sitting there. We'll get into it, but I was like, this is for children.
My sister watched this movie. Her and her friend watch Saturday night movies together where they text one another, much like Annie and I tortured ourselves every week with And Just Like That.
Yeah.
And she watched this and she was so pregnant with my nephew and she just kept panic texting her friend to be like, are they going to throw that baby in a well? Like, what's going on?
What's
a
happening?
Baby in a well?
Baby?
God.
So bad. Okay, so at the time of its release, our resident misogynist, Roger Ebert, gave this movie 4 stars. And y'all, we've been doing this a while, and I am shocked because I cannot recall the last time we covered a movie where Mr. Pulitzer Prize himself gave 4 stars, calling it, quote, the best Disney animated feature since Beauty and the Beast, a whirling, uplifting, thrilling story with a heart-touching message that emerges from the comedy and song, end quote.
I need everyone to write in whether or not they were uplifted at the end of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Of course, he gave this one 4 stars because he himself is the Frollo of movies. So he was like, yeah, we're persecuting travelers, people of color, disfigured people are so ugly, they gotta be in that tower.
They need to be locked away. The lies that Frollo tells.
And then he's like, Jason Alexander's here. What?
Oh my gosh. So is Frank from Murphy Brown. And so is our favorite nun from Sister Act.
I know.
And this was her last movie.
Oh.
I know. She was Aunt March in Little Women, the 1994 version.
Mm-hmm. I just feel like Roger Ebert giving this movie 4 stars just backs up the points that I've made countless times on the show and on Still Comfy, that Roger Ebert was a bad man. He was a bad man and he was a misogynist.
Yeah.
And he hates women. So of course he loves the movie where literally the main woman is likened to be the seductress from hell.
Yeah. Okay.
burning fire.
Yeah. So okay, so tell me about when you first saw this movie and what that experience was like.
Sure. I was all of 7 or 8 years old when The Hunchback of Notre Dame premiered.
Okay.
And I know we did not go to the movie theater to see it. So I did watch it on its movie at home VHS release.
Nice.
My mother immediately hated this movie. So my
Because
sister,
she was terrified or because
yeah,
of oh yeah.
because she's like, this movie is scary as hell. What the hell kind of cartoon is this? And my parents are not the like kind of parents to all of a sudden be like, we can't watch this. No, I was
Mm,
wildly unsupervised.
yeah.
However, so my sister and I are convinced that we only watched it like once or twice as kids. However, my mother is at a Walmart, a Target, a TJ Maxx one day, and what should be on clearance but the Esmeralda bedroom set. And
Oh.
there's 2 twin sets on clearance. And so my sister and I had the Hunchback of Notre Dame Esmeralda bed set for this movie that we did not watch. And when we brought this up at her house the last time we were all at her house together, she was like, you all really liked the goat. And I was like, we did like that goat.
The goat was awesome.
We did like Dolly. and and so my childhood experience of the Hunchback of Notre Dame is getting to watch it once, being like, that lady is so pretty. And then spending a large portion of my childhood tying my bedroom like
Scarf.
sheet
Yeah.
to my waist and dancing around, clapping my hands while I made my sister leap like a goat around me.
Nice.
And thus my fashion aesthetic be born, because
Yeah.
I do pride myself in like always being like very colorful and jangly and all of it.
I love that. You know what else I thought when I was watching the movie to this time around?
Sure.
Should it have been Demi Moore? Because I feel
No,
like Esmeralda, she's a brown woman, right? Like
she's a brown
they
woman.
used brown ink to animate her, and it's voiced by Demi Moore. I was like, this is making me uncomfortable, and I don't know if I'm valid in this or if I'm just being overly sensitive.
One of my notes is that her voice, I had filled in what her voice sounded like in my head, and it is nowhere near close to what she actually sounds like in the movie. Her voice is not smoky, it is not sultry, it is not doing anything to bring this hellfire seductress to life. And I'm like, ooh, Demi Moore. Ooh, they needed that Jessica Rabbit lady to do this movie. Like literally anyone who was going to put some room to it.
Or just like, somebody who's not white.
Yeah. Literally.
Like literally anyone who's not white.
Is the voice actress for Jasmine white, or did we do it okay there?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. I just know that Paige O'Hara got to do a lot of voice acting work for Disney.
Yeah, that contract was solid, I'm sure. Yeah, I don't remember, but the whole time I was like, I don't know how I feel. Like, because nowadays we have what's called digital blackface, where using like memes of Black people or like the Black people emojis. I was like, is this 1990s version of digital blackface?
Yes.
It made me so uncomfortable.
I would really like,
and then the blonde man is like, look at that beautiful woman. Oh my God, I'm mesmerized. And I'm like, of course he's a blonde man going after a brown sister. Like,
so a lot of my favorite voice actors in the D&D community, they do a lot of anime. Oh. And I'm always like, and again, you're hired to do the anime or whatever. And I'm like, okay, so thinking about my extensive knowledge of Pokemon, how would I racially classify Ash Ketchum? And then I'm like, and then am I okay with Ash Ketchum being quite. And it just like, it boggles my mind, and I feel like there is such a like wall between the character that you're actually playing and yourself when you are a voice actor.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I understand. I'm sure that Demi Moore was more than hot in this year in the 90s.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's kind of one of the only big names in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like Phoebus was someone I did not recognize. Frollo, someone I did not recognize. So it's really her and Jason Alexander, whose name you can get people to look at on a
Right.
poster.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't, I mean, all these years later, I don't know if it is something to like make a big deal out of. I guess it's definitely not something that I thought about as a kid.
No, and her voice irritated me the entire movie because I was like, this does not fit my memories of Esmeralda. I was
Right.
like, because Esmeralda probably is one of my first like brushes with female sexuality. If not, I don't know who came first, Aladdin or Hunchback.
Aladdin.
But yeah, so we've got Jasmine in the red outfit, and we all know it. We can all picture it. And
Mm-hmm.
then Esmeralda. Those are probably like none of the other Disney princesses like broach their sexuality.
No, they don't. And
No.
isn't that interesting that they're both brown characters?
Yes. From what I'm sure ignorant white people who sat in a room and wrote this movie would call from exotic lands and
Right.
backgrounds.
Right. So that then in there of itself is also a problem. That our
Right.
first
Yeah.
two, like that are the only two characters from the 90s that we can think of as being
There are a
like
lot.
in tune with their sexuality are the two brown characters.
Well, and also there are, as I was watching it, I would see more and more parallels to Aladdin to where I was like, I wonder if they
Mm.
reused a lot of the staff and the animation. They have a narrator at the top to set our
Mhm.
scene
Mhm.
with like a little song.
Mhm.
Um, Esmeralda is the female version of Aladdin.
Right.
I think that a lot of that red costume and like from Jasmine translated very well into Esmeralda's
Mhm.
costume when
Mhm.
she's dancing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that you compare it to Aladdin because it does have a lot of like similarities because the scene where they're dancing where they're like, hey, it's our day, where they can come out of hiding and do the big ceremony. I forget what it's called.
The Feast of
um
Fools.
Thank you. The Feast of Fools feels very much like the big scene in Aladdin. You have to bear with me because it's been a minute since I've seen Aladdin. But when all of the princes are coming to meet Jasmine,
Hmm.
it has that kind of vibe to it.
Yeah. Well, and probably a lot of Prince Ali's vibe. Prince
Mm-hmm.
Ali.
Oh, maybe that's the scene I'm
Yeah,
thinking of. That's he rides in on an elephant, right?
he does. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's right after. So there are two scenes that basically follow one another. So
Mm-hmm.
she's meeting her suitors, and
Right.
then boom, here comes Prince Ali,
That's
and then we've
right.
got a big musical number.
Right. That's right.
I also saw a lot of
Same,
parallel.
same height, Quasi's
Yeah,
hiding and Jasmine tries to hide. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, you saw parallels.
I saw parallels between Quasimodo and Hercules too, especially between the Out There song and Go the
Mm,
Distance. I'm like,
mm-hmm.
these are the same tunes.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. Did they just start phoning it in towards the end of the decade?
I believe so. I've watched enough behind the animation scenes of Disney to
Mhm.
know that they have always recycled animation.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. I mean, yeah, because especially in the days of hand-drawn animation.
Hmm.
Okay, so in 2021, the New York Times did a look back at the Hunchback, and the headline read, "The Hunchback of Notre Dame at 25, the most R-rated G you will ever see," and said, quote, "However it came about, A ratings board made up of parents decided that a film with a musical number about lust and hellfire and a plot that involves the threat of genocide against gypsies was appropriate for a general audience. The Times even goes into detail about how the filmmaker didn't want to take this centuries-old Victor Hugo tale and Disneyfy it. So do we agree with the Times? Is this the most R-rated, G-rated movie? I'm leaning towards yes.
Well, number one, I thank you for backing me up with the New York Times. That makes me feel fancy because
Yeah.
when I pitched you, like, we should do the Hunchback of Notre Dame, you looked at me because what a choice. And I said, it's the scariest, sexiest movie you
Mhm.
could ever think of.
Well, and the first 10 minutes are or not even 10 minutes. It's like 5 minutes when the gypsies are trying to like flee Frollo because he's a monster and she's holding her baby
Yeah.
and then he just like in cold blood murders her.
And we see the murder. That's not
Yes.
something that normally happens in a Disney movie. I believe we heard the gunshot. We did not see the gunshot for Bambi's mom.
Correct. I was like, oh, you guys just straight showed that. And then this fucker is like, oh, this baby is hideous. Where's the nearest water source? Like, what?
We have to drown the monster baby, which when I read the book, ooh, this would be a good screen adaptation because I loved all of her books. When I read the book that inspired the movie, The Other Boleyn Girl, about Anne Boleyn, that launched my obsession and my soul connection with Anne Boleyn, they talk about her giving birth to a disabled baby that does not survive. And like the parallels between Frollo reacting to Quasimodo and what people said about Anne Boleyn and this baby that she lost, one in the same.
Dang.
Yeah. Monster, full of sin. This only comes because the devil punished you with it. Like,
not inbreeding. Inbreeding has nothing to do with potential, birth defects.
Not anything like being malnourished and on the run because you're a traveler.
Yeah, my comment was in reference to Anne Boleyn. Sorry,
Yeah.
not Quasimodo.
No. But also both. Like, the thing is, it's like, what a time for the Renaissance to be happening and all of these like ridiculous thinkers to be on the scene. And like Leonardo da Vinci had to contend with people still believing that God would just smite you every time you were bad.
Yeah.
Then, I mean, the whole plot is that one privileged white man is so hard up for a traveler and he's so racist, he can't deal with the fact that he gets a boner for a traveler woman. So his only solution is genocide.
Right.
God is, he's like, I have to kill my temptation. And I was like, oh yeah, Dateline tells me all the time that that's why men kill us, because we tempted them away from their God, and the Bible backs them up. I go, however, genocide, that's an extra step.
It's unnecessary.
It's an unnecessary step.
And also what confuses me about this whole like in the name of God genocide is then why then are you safe in the church?
I believe only because of that one bald man who stays in the steps of Notre Dame, so Frollo can't murder people in the church.
Yeah, he's like, I'm the archbishop. You can't come in here and fuck shit up. And you're just like, good on you. But also, do you serve the same God then? Because his God told him to do this. Like, it just is like one of those things where just like, this is why religion makes no sense. If people want to have religion, great. Don't murder people in the name of your religion, because that math ain't mathin'.
I mean, and it's one of the later questions, but to be a 34-year-old and have to be face to face with Frollo again and to be like, oh, this is the evil of man.
Yeah.
This is Jeff Goldblum being like, God kills man, God creates dinosaurs, because men will use God until they do not need God, and then they will kill God to make sure that they get their way.
Yeah, the whole time I'm like, this movie is so like, this is very clearly like this man is full of hatred for no reason. He's clearly racist. The treatment of the gypsies is horrific. You know, when she's dancing and gets all that money, and then the guards are like, oh, gypsies don't do anything legit for their money. They don't know how to earn money. Just the language that they use to disparage them, like her people, it just is so like, how is this a kids movie? And it's one of those things that made me think like, when white parents are like, well, we can't teach Black history to our children because it's too gruesome, and they shouldn't have to bear that burden. And you're just like, I want to ask, do you let them watch The Hunchback of Notre Dame? Because that's kind of a primer of what you did to Black people. Or not you
Honestly,
did, what was done to Black people.
what your grandma did, what your great grandmother did,
Yeah. So it's
what
kind of like,
grandpappy
it's
did.
like truly, it's like one of those things where I'm just like, no, you don't get to pick and choose. Like, and we know from like, I mean, we don't study European history in this country in the way that we probably should, but from my rudimentary knowledge of European history, this movie isn't that far from the truth.
Mm-hmm. 100%. It's just the Hunchback of Notre Dame is a fucking trip the entire time. Like I was like, I remember it being scary.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it being a movie that is all about, and you know, the 90s were so big on abstinence and purity that they're like,
Yes.
here, I was like, how dare you make the villain be the person to be like, lust will be the reason that you burn in hell. I don't,
Right.
now I'm gonna go fuck everyone. That guy was mean. Like,
Terrifying. Like, he's so
terrifying.
terrifying. And it's like how manipulative he is. And this kind of answers the next question, which is, do you think this movie ended up Disney-fied? My answer to that is, I don't think so. He's so, I mean, yes, he is manipulative in the way that all the evil villains are, but at least Snow White's stepmother tried to kill her with an apple and not throw her in a body of water.
Right. Or burn her out of her home. I mean,
Or burn her at the stake.
I looked for Disney-fied ways that they were like, no, it's a Disney movie, we promise.
Yeah.
And there are talking gargoyles.
Yes, that's the one thing.
There is an animal sidekick.
Oh, yes, number 2. Mm-hmm.
There is a banner of a soundtrack.
Yes.
It is like Prince of Egypt level baning of a soundtrack.
Yeah, yeah.
It is In the Dark of the Night, Anastasia, like, bum, bum. Like that Hellfire song. Damn.
Yeah.
It does try to wrap up in a very nice moral, but the moral of the story is you're human enough to have one friend, but ugly enough you'll never find love.
Yes,
like that's Quasimodo's story arc.
Yes, I was like, when he like put their hands together and was like held their hands in his hands, I was like, baby, you can have love too. Why is this movie telling us that he can't have love? Like,
because it was the 90s.
Because are you trying to tell us that he's being a bigger person by saying that's like his way of giving permission for them to be in love, and like he's not allowed? Like, it just made me so, I was just like, you guys, he's not even that hideous looking.
And they created an unlikely love story between a thief and a cop.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because Phoebus is a cop.
He's the head of all the cops.
He's the head of all the cops. And he tries to be like, I'm a good cop, though.
Because he saved her life twice.
Yeah, I'm a good cop. I should get to fuck this lady.
Yeah. I'm enamored by her.
I'm enamored by her and her traveler curves.
You know these fools are sitting somewhere going, I'm so proud of myself for Hunchback. We did a good job. We did it.
We brought in the church. We had
the goat sidekick. That's the best part about that movie.
Women's rights.
Women's rights.
We fought for women.
We proved that this population of people doesn't deserve genocide from this movie.
Also, no one was on board with Frollo and his genocide.
No
At le-
one, not a
in,
one.
in America, when Trump was like, genocide, there were people on board.
Mm-hmm.
In Hunchback of Notre Dame, France, with Frollo, people are like, "Man, you're just wildin'. How did you get into this place of power?" No one is truly on board.
Right. I just like, there's just like, I don't like, I do not want our friends at home to misunderstand. I did enjoy this film because the music was fantastic. When you peel back the layers and start looking at it, because, I hate the people. Well, I don't hate them. It bothers me when people are like, well, don't think so deeply about it. Sir, I don't know how to do that.
Sir, this is a movie that I watched when I was 9.
Yeah, like I'm gonna start
As a
thinking about things in a way that maybe you should too.
as a 9-year-old, I was taught, well, dance sexy because it's fun, but then no, it's a sin and you're the devil, and a man could murder you for this. And it turns out, very valid lesson. Thank you, Disney. That
Mhm,
is 100% true. A
mhm.
man could murder me with the justification of my feminine joy alone.
Yep. Have you heard of silent reading parties? Well, the Jelly Pops Book Club is now hosting our very own silent reading party called the Reading Salon. We meet at a local business, order drinks and snacks, then read for an hour or so. And then after the reading time is over, you can stick around and talk with fellow book lovers about what you're reading or what authors you love or what books are your favorite. Purchasing a ticket gets you into the party, but a VIP ticket gets you a bag full of book themed goodies. To learn more about the Reading Salon, click the link in the show notes. Come for the reading, stay for the friends. You've heard me talk about my artwork on the show, but what you might not have known is I started painting in 2020 as a way to cope and spent a year working with watercolor painting people. But then I started painting cards because I realized how much I love sending cards, but hated trying to sift through card aisles of big stores. I couldn't find anything that would capture the feelings I was going for. I even started putting my designs on tote bags and glassware. Then I got into candle making. Most of my work is literary inspired, designed for those bookish, pun loving folks. And now I've opened a shop where you can see most of these designs. Since everything is handmade, there's a lot of one of a kind items. When you purchase one of my items, you are purchasing a small piece of original artwork that you can send to a friend or frame at your home. So head on over to juliawashingtonproductions.com to check it out. Shipping is currently only available in the US. Or you could click the link in our show notes. Okay, let's talk about Esmeralda.
Sure.
We already kind of touched on the fact that it makes me uncomfortable that Demi Moore is her human voice.
It's so annoying. Just sound wise, it does not fit the animation.
Because you have this very brown woman with these deep green eyes and this gorgeous wavy raven hair,
Hmm.
and she's voiced by a white woman.
Yeah, it's a rough time.
It's a choice.
It's a rough time. I think the most interesting thing about Esmeralda is they leaned full into, like, her sexuality was the driving force of all of the
Mm-hmm.
conflict in
Mm-hmm.
her story. And the only other time I can think of Disney making a choice to make sexuality be the front of a woman's character is in in an animated way, is in a very silly way with Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Jessica Rabbit.
Right.
It was part of the bit, it was part of the joke. And then to have this juxtaposition to where it's like, but Esmeralda's gonna die because of this. Seductress Hellfire. They write an entire song about how she's going to bring the entire country of France to hell
Right.
through a
Which
tambourine.
Right. And it's almost like I feel like that's definitely like a subconscious bias situation because Jessica Rabbit is a pale redhead that is the stuff of dreams for every person attracted to women everywhere. And then,
Mm-hmm.
as like I said, Esmeralda is brown, beautiful raven hair, stark green eyes, and it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's a detriment.
A detriment. Yes.
Whereas for Jessica Rabbit, it's, how she maneuvers. And I guess, Esmeralda is using it to maneuver and survive in the world too, because as women, we have to learn how to do that to survive. But the end messaging, to your point, is very different in the case of Esmeralda.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, both very much a part of my journey of like, should Natalie date women? And the answer is yes.
Sexual awakenings happen in the
Sexual
movies.
awakenings happening. Thank you, Xena, Jessica Rabbit, and Esmeralda.
Yeah.
But also thank you, Frollo, and abusive Christianity for making me go, no, never mind. My family will hate me and all of France.
Yeah.
Shout out to France for being my number 4 or number 5 country
Nice
of listeners.
Love it. Love it.
But it is one of those things where it's a real interesting stance to take, that the reason why travelers were prejudiced against in France had nothing to do with their quote unquote bohemian lifestyle, or that they were people who were, I believe, driven out of their original home.
Correct.
And that is why they became travelers.
Correct.
So they didn't actually fit into your country's culture or whatever. They were very counterculture. It has everything to do with Cher and Esmeralda being trampy and they make us upset.
Right. And it's like again, it falls into that unconscious bias situation. And in this case with Esmeralda, it's very biased. Like, it's not unconscious at all. Like, Frollo is very, very biased. But I mean, in terms of like creating Esmeralda and choosing to use 15th century gypsy culture as part of like the structure of and foundation of who's Esmeralda and her people are, like, it'd be one thing if we saw consistently that our Disney heroines all had a level of sexuality that was similar to what Esmeralda has, but we don't, because Cinderella and Snow White and Belle are demure and chaste and, lovely, and Esmeralda is strong and powerful and but they're all shaped kind of, differently too. Like, so it's like one of those things where it's like all of our white Disney leading ladies are quote acceptable. Like, the most egregious one, if you want to say egregious, is Belle, because she reads. Like, that's her defying action.
And I would have to wonder, should there be a scene thrown in where not only does Frollo just need to masturbate a little bit to the idea of Esmeralda and just like get out all that pent up aggression, but if we had like a scene where like a little white French scullery maid also became an object of his fixation, and then we can place blame back on him because he's repressing urges that I'm like, you're not the Pope and you're not the Archbishop.
Right.
Why aren't you fucking?
Right.
What? Right. Why do you not have a wife? Why aren't you fucking? Then we can place the onus back on him. It's him repressing. It's him self-sabotaging. What do Christians do when they beat themselves? Self-flagellating.
Oh yeah.
It's him. It's him torturing, and it's all because of his warped version of reality. But because it's only Esmeralda, and it's only Esmeralda that we see dancing in the flames, and she is one of, I don't think Pocahontas is out at this time, but if it is, she's one of 3 Disney heroines of color.
Yeah, that's a really good point because
And now are we
sorry, go ahead.
are we up to 5 because of Moana and Tiana, or am I missing someone? I know there's that
Um,
little girl who has Sophia the First. Um, I know that there are
this
some
is
Disney
after
Channel cartoons.
Hunchback is after Pocahontas. I just wanted to
Okay,
confirm that. So now
so we
so
have
we have
one of 3.
3. Um, Tiana
And
came out
Esmeralda,
in the teens, 20 teens, I think.
I was in college because I
Yeah,
went
so
with my college boyfriend.
I was going to say I was an adult because there was a full-on conversation about I cannot believe you didn't give Tiana a black prince to fall in love with. Like that was a whole internet storm that we don't have time for to have that conversation because that is not why we are here.
Okay, you can cut this out. What nationality is Naveem? Is that not his name?
I think that's
I
his
haven't
name. Hold
seen the
on.
movie in a while.
Well, yeah, I mean, I haven't either. Hold on.
Is he French?
No, I think he's Middle Eastern.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I will cut that part out. But I think he's Middle Eastern. Um,
I think I still coded him as a black man.
oh, that's interesting. Bruno Campos plays his voice, who is
If anything, I coded him as a mixed man.
he's got okay, hold on. He's Brazilian, the actor that plays him.
Oh, okay. Brazilian. So a man of color.
Oh, he's like international. He grew up in Brazil, Toronto, Bahrain, and Houston. Either way, the point is they did not
Yeah.
hire a black man to voice him, and they did not like present this character as a black character.
Um,
Anyway,
so
back to the yeah.
we've got one of 3 heroines of color, and I would argue that Pocahontas is also sexualized in a very odd way.
I was gonna bring that up because I remember really thinking that wow, she's like when I was a kid when it came out, because I think I was 11 when Pocahontas came out. I remember thinking like very different thoughts about Pocahontas in a way. Again, back to that like she's strong, she's fiery, she's a little bit more sexual, but I didn't have the language at 11 to say sexual, right?
Right. And I think the thing of it is it's always the presence of a white man
Mm-hmm.
deciding that, except for maybe Jasmine and Jafar,
Mm-hmm.
but white ideology coming into a culture that is not based in white ideology and then going like, I'm kind of thrilled by this, but that's also scary. And there's
Right.
always like one guy in the room who's like, but I'm okay with it. And then he's the hero. And then the villains are like, I'm going to destroy their entire culture,
Right.
which is how colonization played out.
Mm.
There's some new movie coming out with Leonardo DiCaprio and an entire native cast, like indigenous
Oh,
American
uh-huh.
cast. And I literally screamed out loud during the preview when I went and saw Bottoms. And I was like, do not fuck that white man. Do not. It will not work out for you or the people of your nation.
Well, if she was
Do
over
not.
25, we know that he won't.
No, I'm pretty sure that they fuck in the movie. Like it's one of
Oh,
those Dancing with Wolves things, except for Kevin
yeah.
Costner found the white lady in like Native American.
Right.
Like just all
Ay.
of these really fucked up ways that white men still code women of color to where it's like she's exotic and she's thrilling and she's not like the other girls because the other girls are upholding all of the white man patriarchal bullshit that you put them
Right.
under.
Right.
And she's free from that. Well, not in about 2 years after you ruin her life.
Right. And that's the thing that I think that's the thing that is much like I loved the Esmeralda character so much because she was very much like, how dare you be cruel to
Mm-hmm.
Quasimodo? Like, why would you allow such cruelty to happen? Because he's a cruel man, is the answer. But they give her these moments where she is so fully human, but then they don't allow her to remain there. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And that's the thing that bothers me because it's like, it's a hurdle for people of color, especially Black women specifically, to be seen as fully fleshed out human with a full range of emotions that aren't just, quote, sexually deviant or advanced. Like, there are so many courtesies offered to little white girls that aren't offered to little Black girls. And as much as like I know that this is just an animated feature, that kind of bias is coming through in this movie.
Well, and I think something that's also fascinating about Esmeralda and is that she's willing to play your game. Like she goes into the steps of Notre Dame, she
Mhm.
claims sanctuary, and then she immediately is like, "Hey God, it's me, you girl. I've
Yeah.
been told that you don't want to talk to me." But there's a whole lot of people in France and on Earth in general that are literally just being persecuted for living.
Correct.
And that, and I like bawled my eyes out during God Help the Outcast because you see all of these like rich, um, presenting white people being like, I ask for wealth, I ask for love, I ask for
Mhm.
power. And that's what they're praying for. And she's like, I ask for nothing. I can get by, but I know so many less lucky than I. And
Mhm.
literally, she's just asking. I mean, honestly, bring back Esmeralda, do a reboot for the millennials because
And make her
Esmeralda just be asking what we be asking.
the center of the story. We don't need Quasimodo.
No.
We need Esmeralda to be the hero of her own story, who isn't overly sexualized, who is fighting. Like, she is what Robin Hood wishes he could be.
Hmm. Like, she's a millennial hero. And Quasimodo kind of does represent a lot for me what we're all going through currently.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we didn't create these towers that are oppressing us and keeping us shackled, like capitalism, misogyny,
Right.
racism, all of it, but we sure are held back by it all.
Right.
And
Right.
we and every time you try to break out of that mold, there is going to be some cruel white man who takes away your abortion rights or tells you that you deserve to be in poverty or tells you that if you weren't so trampy, maybe things would be better for you.
Right. Or if, you didn't do enough to be trampy, but not in that way. They wouldn't say it like that. Well,
Hmm.
if you were more willing,
If you're more sensual,
it's like willing to do what? Don't touch me.
there's a fine line between sensual and slutty, and the only person who knows about it is a pervy white man.
Mm-hmm.
And they get to dictate that line and they get to move it.
It moves
But
whenever they feel.
because I do find the character of Quasimodo to be a very endearing character.
Yes, he's sweet. He's got a big heart.
That ending scene where that little girl just moves her
Oh my
hands through
gosh.
his face and then hugs him and
I
he's
cried.
finally just like because they've all been aware that he is a member of their community,
Mm-hmm.
but he doesn't get to be a member of their
Right.
community. And again, that wasn't on their terms.
Right.
And then the Feast of Fools kind of brings it forthright that like, well, he's a member of your community that you've known about forever. It's like when you have that weird neighbor that everyone's real concerned about, but no one's willing to go check on.
Right. I don't want to
Uh,
knock on that door.
I'm not knocking on that door. Quasimodo is weird Barbie. Quasimodo
Yeah.
walked so weird, but Barbie could run.
Yes.
He is the weird Barbie of France, and he's very sweet. And of course he's very sweet. He gets to live under one cruel man, but he doesn't actually live under like the cruel man's society.
Right.
So he kind of gets to there are a lot of parallels between Frollo and Mother Gothel to the point where they almost look like siblings.
Yeah.
But I could also see them hooking up in the bathroom of Club House of Mouse. That cartoon. Everyone remember that cartoon when Mickey owned a nightclub and you never knew who was showing up? I could see Mother
Oh
Gothel and
my
Frollo hooking up in the
God.
bathroom.
She's like,
And
hey,
it,
hot stuff.
hey, what up? You want to oppress some youths today? You got a tower waiting for me? What?
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Makes me wish I could do animations. That way I could like do a little mini video of
just for
that.
me.
Yeah.
Just for me.
That's so funny. He's like, hey girl, can I get you what you drinking? You want me to get you another one? You need a refill?
Because they're the same person. Evil can only present itself in so many ways.
Right?
They're the same person. They believe all of the same things, and they have a righteousness to their evil.
And that's what it is. It's the righteousness that kills me, because even if someone isn't evil and they have a righteousness to them, I'm always like, and I'm out.
I'm out. If you do something bad and you can look me in the eye and be like, whew, that was a misstep. Yeah, okay, thank you for not being a sociopath. But if you're just Frollo twirling in Notre Dame being like, God, I didn't mean to be turned on, and I did not mean to kill the woman who was Quasimodo's mother. She made me do it because I couldn't handle my boner. It's not my fault. There's truly nowhere we can go with you. Throw you all the way away. Throw you off of the off of the roof of Notre Dame, like we threw Gaston. Just throw them.
Gaston.
Yeet.
We don't need that. We don't need more Gastons in the world.
Do you know that there is a subset of men?
Also a French story.
Also a French story. Do you know that there is a subset of men who believe that Gaston is truly a victim of the like nice guys finish last? Yeah.
Gaston is not a nice guy.
I've seen Reddit posts, and I'm surprised I haven't seen it on TikTok, but it's one of those things where it's like, what? He just wanted to marry her.
No.
He bought out her father a couple of times.
No.
He just wanted to take her out to dinner once. I believe an ex also reiterated all of this to me. Like, it's the whole devil's advocate of like, well, through Gaston's eyes, he's the hero. He was trying to save her from the beast. And and I was like, oh, well, in the first 15 minutes of the musical, he tries to hit her.
Right.
And I remember not being prepared for that because I've always viewed Gaston as a very ridiculous villain.
Yeah.
Just very like your run-of-the-mill himbo who really thinks he's something.
Yeah.
And then in the musical, he goes to hit her and I screamed. Because I was so taken into seeing Beauty and the Beast on stage for the first time. And I was not expecting that. And like,
oh my gosh,
just a sound rang through the theater, and it was from me.
Oh my gosh.
I would definitely go see the Hunchback of Notre Dame on stage, though, and I'm kind of really sad that it didn't do as well on Broadway as I think it should have done.
Yeah, well, it's that unconscious racial bias.
Right. I'm sorry. Were we trying to uplift people of color?
So let's now talk about how, and I know you touched on this already a little bit, but how different watching this movie is now from when you were a kid.
Well, number one, I am still always and forever shocked by how overwhelmed and surprised I can still be about the evils that live inside of privileged men.
Correct.
So here I am. I'm 34 years old. I've viewed privileged men. I've been hurt and abused by privileged men. And I've watched men on top destroy my country, my life, my home, and my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, still watching the Hunchback of Notre Dame, I'm like, shit, he's literally just going to do genocide because he's so uncomfy with his natural sexual urges. He's John Wayne Gacy. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And you're just watching it and you're like, this can't be real. And yet, name 8 people who remind you of Frollo who are literally causing harm just because they believe others should suffer because they're uncomfortable.
Right. Right.
I guess
It's
the movie tried to prepare me for this. I don't know.
I was gonna say it feels like as much as there is like flaws with this film, it's almost like, hey kids, we
Hi,
know as
babies.
Disney, we've done a really good job at making you think there is justice in this world and you have a voice, but actually you don't, and things be shit.
I don't know how the person who spearheaded being like, oh, we should definitely do a Disney version of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I don't know how they convinced Disney.
Because the I was reading about it. The guy who directed it, who was like the spearhead, he was dedicated to like not Disneyfying it. The Disney CEO at the time took a hands-off approach. Like that was part of the
Oh.
agreement.
Oh. Was he like hands off with all of Disney or literally just this project?
Just this particular project.
I still don't know how this movie got backing. Like when I think about this movie in comparison
Mhm.
to every other Disney movie we have watched, even movies that deal with racial oppression like Frozen 2,
Mhm.
it still stands apart in its very own story structure
Yeah.
and how close to home this villain could be.
Right. And that's part of why I wanted to like give myself a refresher on Victor Hugo's original story, because it was like I forget which article it was. It didn't make it into it rich review it was, because it didn't make it into the script for us today. But he was very much like, we are not doing that to Victor Hugo. You see what you did to Pocahontas? We're not doing that here. And yeah, so now I'm like, how much, like how distilled did this story become? Because it, like you said, it doesn't really fit within the way that Disney tells our stories.
Especially 90s Disney. If
Yeah.
this movie came out in 2015 and we were running out of stories and we were like, well, I guess we're going to give stories to people of color. You
Mm-hmm.
can't tell Snow White 7 times.
Right.
Can't do
God.
it. I would understand that it's a
Mm-hmm.
little grittier, but for this to be 90s Disney, like the
Mm-hmm.
Disney of our childhood,
Yeah.
like Pocahontas is a really great movie with a banger of a soundtrack. It's not scary.
No.
Um, I think the only movie that really unsettled me the most out of Disney that isn't The Hunchback of Notre Dame is, for whatever reason, I was really terrified of The Great Mouse Detective. I do
Oh,
not know why. I also
interesting.
I also found it like boring, but also scary enough that I was like, I can walk away from this and never watch it again. But I truly cannot think of other unsettling Disney movies.
I mean, like Fantasia, but that was generations before us.
Oh, I love Fantasia.
I do too, but I think that if a certain age group sees it, like there can be really some parts that might feel like a little scary. But I don't know if nowadays, because we've had so much, I don't know.
But I think Fantasia, you can grow out of it being scary. Like, I'm pretty sure we always skipped the ending of
Mhm.
Fantasia with
Mhm.
like the demon
Right.
because my sister didn't like it.
Mhm.
But you grow out of that. I don't think you can grow out of the Hunchback of Notre Dame being scary.
No, because we're grown ass women and we were very like distraught. Like,
Yeah. I was distraught the entire movie.
yeah. Okay, friend, I really appreciate you coming by today. Tell everybody where they can find you, where they can support you.
Hey everyone, I'm the host of your weekly podcast, To All the Men I've Tolerated Before. It's a weekly look at everyday misogyny. You can also catch me on Instagram at Men I've Tolerated Pod or Natalie K124. Natalie K124 is also my TikTok handle, where you'll see me doing a number of weird things live on the internet.
What?
What? Do you know how you make money on the internet? You make money on the internet by doing weird shit.
Okay.
Okay. That's how you trick Frolos into giving you their money.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Sorry, keep plugging. I didn't mean to distract you. My laughter.
Some things I haven't talked about on the show before that are kind of new to all the men I've tolerated before is we've had a Patreon, but now there is that free tier option, like Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous did with their free trial. So that's open for all tiers. We now have a blog and a newsletter. So there will be a link when you go to find me on Instagram that you can find all of that stuff.
And we'll link it in the show notes to make it everybody's business. I was going to say to make it easier for everybody to find.
To make it everybody's problem.
Yes.
Yes.
It is always a good time when Natalie stops by, but when your friends come on the show, it's not even work. I mean, we laughed. We didn't cry. We mostly laughed, and it was so great. If you also have similar feelings about the Hunchback of Notre Dame, please let us know. You can DM either of us, or if you're a Patreon pal, you can head on over to the Patreon chat. And speaking of Patreon, if you join our Patreon at patreon.com/Julia Washington, you get all kinds of bonus content. So like I said, go to patreon.com/Julia Washington to learn more about becoming part of our community. There's a bunch of different levels to choose from. Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous is written and edited by me, your host. And if you're new around here, I am a writer, podcast host, and artist based in California. When I'm not facilitating the Jelly Pops Book Club, which is the book club of this podcast, or recording this podcast, painting cards, or doing other creative things, I am teetering on existential dread because what even is current society? You can find me on Instagram or TikTok at the Julia Washington, and I can't guarantee it's a good time, but it's a good time for me. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. Until next time.